Dear colleagues, it is a pleasure for us to take part in this Congress. Our communication is entitled Perfectionism Levels in Combat Sports, and the authors are Roberto Ruiz-Barquín and Blas Díaz-Valenzuela from the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, and Carlos Gutiérrez-García and Marta Zubiaur-González from the Universidad de León, both in Spain. Perfectionism is a personality trait characterized by the self-imposition of unrealistic standards of performance, the motivation to be a perfectionist, and the perception of the environment as too demanding and critical. During the last decade, it has been frequent subject of a study for sports psychologists due to its complex and ambivalent potential contribution to sports practice and performance. According to Hill and Madigan, perfectionism is perhaps the most studied personality trait in sport, dance, and exercise. This may be because, whereas perfectionism can pervade all domains of life, it appears to be an especially common characteristic among those performing in this domain. Nevertheless, research on perfectionism in combat sports is still scarce, according to González Hernández and González Reyes. This study aimed at describing the characteristics of perfectionism in a sample of combat sports athletes and comparing the athletes' perfectionism levels according to sex, age, and performance level. We followed a cross-sectional descriptive study of populations through survey research design, which was approved by the Ethics Commission of the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. A total of 108 combat sport athletes, 82 men and 26 women, all over 18 years old, mean age 27 years, were recruited through availability sampling in 12 sports clubs of Madrid province, Spain. These athletes represented 8 combat sports, 30 athletes mixed martial arts, 9 jiu-jitsu, 8 Brazilian jiu-jitsu, 13 karate, 12 kung fu, 14 boxing, 8 kickboxing, and 14 judo. We made 2 age groups, the first between 18 and 24 years, and the second between 25 and 47 years old. 8 athletes, 77.4%, were included in the high performance level group, professionals or semi-professional competitors, 15 in the medium performance level group, federated amateur competitors, and 85, it is nearly 80%, in the low performance level group that were no competitors or no federated. Research tools included a socio-demographic questionnaire adapted from Ruiz-Barquín, De la Vega, and Redon, 2010, and the Frost Multidimensional Perfectionism Scale, Spanish version by Carrasco et al., 2009. This 35-item scale is composed of 6 subscales. First, concern over mistakes with 9 items. Second, personal standards, 7 items. Parental expectations with 5 items. Parental criticism with 4 items. Doubts about actions, 4 items. And organization, 6 items. We can also consider adaptative perfectionism, which is the sum of personal standards and organization scales, and maladaptive perfectionism, which is the sum of concern over mistakes, parental expectations, parental criticism, and doubts about actions scales. The athletes and their trainers were informed on the study purposes and procedures, and they all agreed to participate. Each athlete completed the questionnaires in a single session, being a sports psychologist always present to provide help if needed. Tests were administered between May and June 2018. Each item is answered on a Likert type scale ranging from 1, strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree. For example, one question about concern over mistakes is, the fewer mistakes I make, the more people will like me. So the participant has to point if he is strongly disagree to strongly agree regarding this statement. Doubts about actions. It takes me a long time to do something right. Parental expectations. For example, my parents have always had higher expectations for my future than I have. Parental criticism. I never felt like I could meet my parents' standards. Personal standards. I have extremely high goals. And organization. I am an organized person. These are examples of these scales. So when the informed consent was obtained from all participants, each of them completed the questionnaires in a single session. All statistical analyses were performed using SPSS statistics and included descriptive statistics, frequencies, percentage, means and standard deviation, and non-parametric procedures, concretely Mann-Whitney, Yu, and Krustel-Wallis tests were used for means comparison. Results. The whole sample achieved the following scores. Whole test, 98.25 points. Concern over mistakes, 20.20. Doubts about actions, 10.16. Parental expectations, 13.48. Parental criticism, 8.88. Personal standards, 22.13. Organization, 21.41. For adaptative perfectionism, 52.74. And maladaptative perfectionism, 43.54. Males and females achieved similar scores, but for organization, where females scored higher with a p-value of 0.018. According to age groups, remember that there were two age groups, from 18 to 24 and from 25 to 47 years old. Results were similar, but for organization also, where the older group registered higher scores with a p-value of 0.03. As for performance level, the high performance level group scored lower than the other groups in doubts about actions with a p-value of 0.03. There were no differences in total score, adaptative perfectionism, and maladaptive perfectionism in any of the groups. The levels of perfectionism found in our study are much higher than those of general population of Spain, according to Carrasco et al. As ours was a cross-sectional study, it is not possible to confirm if combat sports practice develops perfectionism, which is the development hypothesis, or if combat sports tend to attract perfectionists. This is the selection hypothesis. Our results were also higher than those found in González and González's study on combat sports, probably because of the differences in the combat sports included in their sample. These authors included wrestling, karate, taekwondo, Muay Thai, boxing, Aikido, capoeira, and kickboxing. Only 3 of these were also present in our sample, which were karate, boxing, and kickboxing. We had mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, kung fu, and judo that were not included in González and González's study. So probably there are some differences in this regard. We didn't find differences according to age and gender groups, but for organizations subscaled, and according to performance levels, but for doubts about actions subscales. This would confirm perfectionism as a generic, broad-spectrum personality trait, which is little influenced by these variables. Further studies with larger samples and/or with longitudinal designs are needed in order to broaden our knowledge on perfectionism in combat sports. All, thank you very much for your attention. Terima kasih banyak atas perhatian Anda. Thank you very much.